Very good. Well, welcome everyone. If you've been here today, you've seen me already. Again, Amy Baldwin with Otter Tail County. And this is the Second Chance Workers session. So just to make sure you came to the right room, that that's where you are, and we're not going to let you out now, because it's going to be a great discussion. We have a group here. I'm going to be just moderating some questions and talking about this topic, and we'll definitely leave time for questions at the end. To make sure that anything that comes up, if you want to hear more about or learn more about or have your other questions answered. But I will start by just letting the speakers introduce themselves, talk about who they are as far as their organization, and then their connection with the Second Chance workforce population. So, Matt.
Yeah, my name is Matt Nagel. I'm with KLN Family Brands. I'm the recruitment and onboarding coordinator there. So I do all the hiring from our salary positions to all of our hourly positions and do all the temp to hire work and things like that. And I work very closely with Hannah at Perham 180 and the folks that go there and also the Rewind facility that we have in Perham as well. So that's me.
And I'm Hannah Frederick, and I'm the program director for Perham 180. We are kind of a step-down housing and employment program for individuals who are transitioning out of halfway houses, mental health facilities, and or just looking for a home, basically, if they are experiencing an unhoused situation.
Thank you. I'm Mike Schommer. I'm the probation director here in Otter Tail County. I've been in the field for, 17 years now. I was trying to do the math. So we work with many of the second chance workers, all the way from juvenile all the way up through adult.
Okay, great. So, did the introduction. So, in all of your varied work, each kind of representing different aspects of this population, and for those who have been involved in the justice system or even coming out of chemical dependency treatment, which also may have been included interactions with the justice system. What are common misconceptions when it comes to employment and the ability to return to work? Let's kick that off, Mike.
Hey, I'll jump right on.
Okay.
So a common misconception, I hear this all the time, this person's on supervision, they must be scary. We can't trust them. But the reality is, most of the individuals we work with there's a high probability, just by numbers here, that somebody here is on probation, right? And multiple. Then I'll meet you in the hallway for a drug test. But the reality, the scary individuals per se are the ones you hear about on the news. Those are the highest risk individuals. We can definitely differentiate between those and just traditional individuals on probation. A lot of the individuals we work with made a mistake. They recognized the mistake and they're just looking for that opportunity. They have a record now that creates barriers. There's unintended consequences to the criminal justice system, we know that. But yet we try to advocate. A lot of agents are advocating for clients left and right, that trying to help them overcome some of those barriers to their mistakes. An individual may have picked up a driving under the influence. It was a mistake. We can work through that. There may have been a theft. There was a mistake. We can work through that. A lot of individuals want to make better of their mistakes, and they want to be productive members of the community. They want to work. They find value in work. So a lot of the individuals may have been raised in a home that was less than conducive to a successful future. And just because they were put behind the 8 ball as a child doesn't mean that they don't have the skills or the potential to develop those skills in a healthy manner, in a positive work environment.
Go ahead.
100% agree. I think some of those misconceptions we've just taken as society, the norms that we've heard over the years, the news. That is exactly what we see. We see like, oh my gosh, that person had a felony and now they're in the news and now they're, they whatever. But the people that that we're supporting they've started like they're the underdogs in their life, and what they have shown me is that it's somebody giving them an opportunity, not just looking at the piece of paper that they get printed off on a criminal background check, because that's not the person. And they want that chance to be a member of society, they're used to hearing no. And so sometimes that becomes their default. And I think when we put trust and we have a good conversation with that person, they already feel like, gosh, I finally have a little chance. And the folks that come to my facility, one of the first things they want to do is work. I've had to have people like, okay, slow down. Like, maybe working that much, you're new in recovery, let's talk about this. Like, no, I need to work, because that's what they've desired. But it's hard, and if you think about times in your life where you've been, no, how many times can you keep hearing it, and then you start to believe it? And so when it's, a place like KLN that starts the conversation with the person, learns more about them and gives them a chance, it starts to change their self-talk too. So.
They covered it.
All right. Great. Well, Hannah, you mentioned Perham 180, and do you want to just describe what that program is and its mission, and then maybe Matt, you can talk about how KLN as an employer engages with it.
Yeah. So I work for Productive Alternatives, and historically we do more employment-based services, but we kind of took an opportunity that KLN had given us back in 2018 to utilize some housing facility that they had empty, and at the time 2018 was kind of, in a sense, where it was a super low unemployment rate, and so like now it's who can we get to work for us. We're used to placing people with disabilities into employment opportunities, and then the next pool is second chance workers, and so we opened up the housing portion, like, let's see who comes. And it didn't take very long where I realized that the need is a supportive program for people who are transitioning mostly out of halfway houses. And when you have spent 3-6 months working on that part of your life with chemical dependency, probably some mental illness, all the other things have been kind of put on hold, then you get thrown back into the environment and you have all these other things to start working on. And so that's where we've really succeeded at stepping in, where we help with putting together resumes, finding those job opportunities, we stabilize their housing, work on all the other things that trips people up. And what we've had the opportunity to do in with KLN, Tuffy's, Kitmasters, Swan Machine, and some other, Perham is a great place. I don't know if you guys have, there's work in Perham, and that has been one of the best things that has helped us become successful for these folks, not a lack of jobs. And so the barrier was just, okay, now we need to get people in. And it takes a conversation. It took a relationship between me and Matt, and then it took a relationship between Matt and that person. And I think that that's been what I've seen develop over the last 4 years.
Yeah, so just speaking on behalf of the company, I think it was, the family and KLN that have, they're always trying to make a difference, and it was an opportunity for them with the Rewind facility and the facilities that we had that we weren't currently using at the time, and it made sense for them to do that. Looking back, we actually had a few other buildings that I think Hannah and I both wished we still had, and we actually unfortunately got rid of those, and not only could we probably use them on the 180 side, but we could be using them currently for our some housing units as well for our own employees. But ultimately, yeah, as we view this, it's a chance to make a difference for the folks that are coming through there. And if you think, the way we look at it is they just don't have anything, and if you just throw them right out there, it's just very tough. So it's really awesome for us to see them successfully complete the program and then come over to Hannah. And so not only do we get to get the advice or how Hannah has interacted with them, but ultimately then bring them over to us, and we ultimately then have supervisors that are kind of aware of this as well, and just make that full connection, not really judging them on what they've done in the past, but how can they continue to move forward. And so from that standpoint, it's been a really, really neat situation that we've seen some very, very cool success stories.
All right, flipping back over to you, Mike. In your experience in supporting, probation clients and the folks you work with directly on a day-to-day basis, and supporting them in returning to the workplace, what are some of the benefits you see for your clients when they're able to engage in a productive work environment, and for the employers that you see the other side as well?
All right, well, we know that idle hands are the devil's playground. So if you're not engaged in positive activity, there's a likelihood you're gonna be engaged in other activity, right? Anyone that has young kids is well aware of that. It's quiet, there's a problem, right? And then when we get older, we're like, we like that quiet. With our clients, we look at dosage. And what that means is we want to ensure that our clients are engaged in a high amount of pro-social activity to minimize the opportunity for antisocial activity. So engaging in treatment, engaging in therapy if needed, engaged in employment, volunteer activities, family time, and so forth. So we're always looking at dosage and looking at how are our clients spending their time. And so a big part of that is employment. They want to work, and we know that once you're employed and you have a reason to get up in the morning, you go somewhere where you feel valued, and you find value in that, helps with the paycheck as well, you feel better about yourself, and so that really helps pick you up. So there's a lot of benefits for our clients to stay engaged in positive activity and stay engaged in employment. And we also see a lot of loyalty built in there too. If someone's willing to give them a chance, like, gosh, I feel valued here, I want to work, I want to get up in the morning. And then that also helps with the mental health and breaking those chains of addiction as well, having that constructive activity. Personally working directly with clients, at times I would build relationships with employers where they're willing to give an opportunity, give a chance. And so I would encourage clients to put my name down as a reference. So if you see someone placing an agent name on a employment application, please don't view that as a negative. That may be an encouragement. Like, you can reach out to this agent who can give you a little bit of insight that, gosh, this guy's really, really working hard. It'd be helpful to give him a chance, or maybe not this time, if they're truly struggling in one way or another. So just having that relationship with the employer has really helped. It helps the clients gain willful employment, then also helps the employers know that this person's actually working hard and trying to do the right thing. As far as employers, you get a loyal employee. There may be some barriers in place where they might have to attend some treatment or so forth as well. But again, that loyalty will pay off in the end. Because a lot of our clients, they find that this person gave me a chance, I want to work for them. I want to continue that employment. Even if I can make a little bit more here, I know I have a good employer here, I know I have that relationship here, and I feel comfortable here, I'm going to give you more. So there's been a lot of benefit to that as well. So that relationship with agent and employer, and then we also don't want to just tell the client, hey, you can get a job here. We may brainstorm ideas on where could you apply this week? What are some ideas? What do you enjoy doing? And we make sure that that employer is on the list so that they feel the value that they got that job on their own, even though we did some background work and behind the scenes work to help them get there. But then again, they feel, as we said, they hear no a lot. So once they hear that, yes, I'll give you a chance, that means the world. And so again, that builds that loyalty piece, and then they feel accomplished, and then that'll pay off in the employment realm as well, that they want to work towards something that they can find value in.
Thanks, Mike. I think you touched on a little bit of this, but as an employer, what might they, you need to keep in mind if you're employing these folks? You mentioned, time for treatment or therapy or things that they might be required to do or needing to do. But what other considerations or accommodations have you, might employers think about when they're employing a second chance worker?
Yeah, so for me, when I first started going down this road, I really wasn't quite sure how to approach it just from that, the background check standpoint. And at the time, we actually didn't even have a background check in place. So we were using some background checks through some agencies that we had, so we had a little bit of a format, but ultimately we put that in place. And what it triggered me to do is just to really ask the question to the key stakeholders in the company of what we value and what direction we want to go with this. So I think that that's always an opportunity as an employer to revisit what your background check policy is, or why was this put in place? If you have anything with agencies, what consists of the rubrics and why are they there? Are there other areas in your facilities or plants where that can be a little bit different based on the people. So I think all those things are great questions to ask. And then ultimately is finding the right spot for them, doing some research with Hannah, potentially an agent, their previous work history, all those obvious things. But for me, I always really like to try to find a supervisor or a manager or that really believes in second chances, that can see that this may not always work out perfect, but really you've got somebody on your team that probably believes in this process, and once it works and you have that good success story and you gain a loyal employee that has that story. I mean, we've got a couple employees right now that are really almost kind of turned into mentors for that next person, and that continues to go. And so we found some really neat stories that has been happening. So, and again, it's an opportunity for us to make a difference in their life on behalf of KLN Family Brands. So.
To that, I think quality employment is important, and when Matt said, finding that right fit, if you have a chance to sit down and find what their interests are, that's going to make them want to be where they are. It's hard for any of us to get thrown into a job we don't want to do every day for 8 hours a day. So when I work with people, often, the overnight shifts are almost always available. And my folks are like, yep, I'm gonna take it. Hold up, is that the right thing for you right now? Will that position provide success? Have you done overnights? Is that healthy for you mentally? We really wanna find the appropriate fit. If you just put somebody in a job that doesn't mean they're gonna be happy, and if you're not happy with what you're doing, you don't wanna go, at 8 in the morning the next day. It's not gonna work for any of us, regardless of our backgrounds. I think the other thing I've learned, for myself, is in these background checks, and this is just I was kind of blown, and I think I've probably worked with some probation officers, I've asked, what does this mean? Because what we see on a piece of paper doesn't necessarily correlate with what really took place. Our justice system, and maybe you'll be able to speak to this, but I feel like we do have some blanket words that end up on what we see for background checks and dates. And so what might look like happened, that happened. And I've done that with my applicants because I do background checks as well. Dude, you just did what in January and now it's March and I'm supposed to house you? And they're like, no, that was 2 years ago. And I've been clean since then. And I've done rehab since then. And I've done XYZ since then. But I just finally went through my court date or whatever happened. And COVID really changed that for people. And so what I've really valued about, Matt specifically is he has sat down with some of these folks and said, tell me what's going on. Tell me about this. Because what you see on a piece of paper isn't always what you get when they actually open up. And we have a gal right now, and I was really hoping she could be here today. It didn't work out, but you hired her and sat with her at Rewind. And then she started working for them and then came over to us. I think she's been promoted at least once, if not twice. And I just spoke with her the other day and I asked her about coming here and she's like, I don't know. But she had just talked the day before and she said, this is wild because I just said to my friend how important this job has been for her. The belief in herself has changed astronomically. And she said, I would not be where I am without my position and without having people believe in me. And now that she's in a higher role, she came in the one day, she's like, I was gone yesterday and I came back and she's like, people missed me. She goes, I've never had, people were excited I was back at work. And she's like, I've never had that before. So those are the stories that keep me doing what I'm doing, keep Matt doing, is it everyone? No, absolutely. But I challenge you, if you have a preconceived notion that the people with colorful background checks are going to be the ones that are going to quit or cause problems, look back at who's shown up, who's not shown up, who's quit, because research says it's not really the case. It's really not like a hard and set percentage, like if they have a felony, they're not gonna work. We have a lot of people quitting these days, so I just think that it's something to really challenge yourself to look at and decide, like Matt said, why have I said nobody with this background can ever work here? What's my reasoning? And some things are very valid. We have vulnerable adult rules, stuff like that, but other times it's like, why have we always done it that way? So I challenge you to just take a moment and look at that.
And then, if I may add one more thing too, just, breaking the chains of addiction is difficult. We all likely know people personally that struggle. When someone is committed to making that change, that's one of the barriers, because they could continue using and still maintain employment, or they could try to get better and then become a better employee, but they might need an afternoon off once a week in order to go to treatment. So is it, if you're looking at long-term success of an employer or as an employee, I mean, is it better to have someone working 40 hours a week, every week, for 6 months, or a 0.8 full-time, or 4 days a week, or 4.5 days a week for 3 years? You're going to get more out of that. We know the costs of turnover. That's pretty self-evident. So if we're able to work with someone through treatment, or even through some therapy appointments, even though it may manifest itself at home and not at work, allowing some flexibility so that people can become better and will benefit both the employer, the employee, and the community as a whole. Because those are some of the barriers where people are saying, well, I can't go to work, I'll lose my job. Or I can't go to treatment, I'll lose my job. We can't have that, because a stable person is a more healthy person for long term.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on that one, when I first was going down that, I wasn't quite sure how to approach that as the employer. So again, I just asked the question, why is this, or what can we do here? And found out real quickly that we did have options. And like Hannah said, they will all come in and tell you that they'll take the worst shift possible at the worst times, down in the basement. And once you get through that, then we kind of just work through, well, what's going to be best for you? And I kind of know their schedules quite a bit now, so I'll get some of them and be like, but you got this every Tuesday morning from 8 to noon, right? And they kind of look at me like, how does he know this already? And so they just become comfortable instantly that, like, okay, this guy knows my schedule, he understands here. I had to go back to our team and say, I know we haven't had part-time, but this is the direction we can go, and we heard it in the beginning of the conference this morning, the flexibility, the change to all those things. And for me, I really had to just press that to our managers, supervisors, and all of our leaders to say, can we do something different? And we have, and that's why I think we're moving in this direction, and so it works.
So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that, Matt, that, you said you had to push it to, I've been through your facilities, I know, the production line, and that's a lot of, whatever the business is, there's work that needs to get done. So any tips on how you got that message across to the management team?
Yeah, so I think I just had to basically, and this is something that we're still continuing to do, to get people to understand with we're trying to attract our workforce is difficult, and the day of being able to choose from 6 to 7 different people and take your pick, they don't understand that unless they can see the data and see what we're working with. And then what I really ultimately had to do was start to get them involved in the hiring process and put a little bit more ownership back on them, and so they can understand and realize the struggle. And then when I proposed that, hey, we've got 2 people here that we can place in a 4 hours and a 4 hours to make 1. I know it's not ideal, but is that something that you'd be willing to? And 6 out of my 7 supervisors said no way, but I had 1 that did, and we made it work. And then they see that it does work. So it's just those small steps and I probably got denied more times than I did get approval, but eventually and so now we're to the point where they'll accept that schedule just about on every one of our shifts.
And I can just, we had a couple years ago, I'm sure you won't mind because we publicly, Kit, Master and Swan Machine, they were full-time. That was what they hired, and they had also, they hadn't approached part-time. And I sat down with a couple people from there and one shift manager and brought in a couple of the folks that were looking for part-time work. And we had a really solid conversation, and we went through a tour, and they said, okay, we'll try it and we'll see what this looks like. So we started, I think, 3 part-time and 1 full-time about 2.5 years ago. 3 out of the 4 are still there, and 1 started full-time, is still full-time, is a lead now, and everybody else that started with him has quit, except him. And now he's doing the onboarding with new people, and then the other 2 that went part-time are now full-time. And so they've just worked themselves. And I actually, all 3 put in extra 10 hours a week because they want to work.
All right, so we focused on Perham 180. We heard about the Rewind program that's in Perham as well. That's, I don't want to say a source, that's not the right way to put it. A referral source of folks that we're talking about. But if employers in the room don't have connections to, or aren't in the Perham area, I mean, any suggestions maybe to Mike or Hannah of other programs you know about, where might there be connections to make to start building these opportunities and relationships? How do you find second chance workers? Maybe that's an easier way to say it.
Put out an ad.
Yeah.
Exactly. Our office is in the courthouse in Fergus Falls.
Except not right now, Mike.
Oh, yeah, no. Sore subject.
It's
It's good. It's being renovated. It's good. You can develop relationships with any of our agents at any time. You're even calling our office. If you have a need, you can call our office and we can ask agents who's really looking for work and what does that schedule look like. We can kind of connect people. We do that with community service work all the time. We'll have some community organizations call our office and say, I could really use some help doing this, this, or this, and we'll find people for that. We can fill that need. We can definitely take a look at our caseloads. We have a lot more people on probation, you probably know, because a lot of people make mistakes. So an agent is a good resource. You can call us at any time. Otherwise, there's treatment centers. You can develop relationships with treatment centers in the area as well. A lot of those individuals have gone, again, they're in their addiction recovery journey. They could be looking for employment as well, and they'll have a good idea of who's stable and who's ready to move forward as well. And a lot of those treatment centers are well aware of the Perham 180 model as a step down as well. So many different resources, and Hannah probably is aware of others too.
Yeah, I would say, specifically Rewind and Perham. There's a Fergus Falls Halfway House, the Matthew House, I think, are just some specifics. Limited casual work. If it's just something where you want to test the waters. And I know HR and all that gets kind of sticky, but even if you personally, gosh, I need some trees cut down. Sometimes people will just want or can do like a cash job because their treatment is heavy enough. They can't do even 20, 30 hours. They could do 10 just to get that foot in the door. So being creative, that's also an opportunity for folks. And it's a chance for you to say, okay, we're not going to jump full in, but let's just give a few trials. And sometimes, even for me, I have somebody who might have a part-time job, but once in a while they're like, gosh, I'd like a little extra. You can call me and say, hey, you have anybody looking for a little work? So we do stuff like that too.
Yeah, I'd say you're likely probably getting people applying for your jobs already that fall into this category naturally, and that's how I first kind of came about it. But ultimately, there are a lot of other opportunities where these folks are probably going to seek help at churches, or there are some Christian mentorship programs. So if there's somebody there that to pass it on to, hey, have them apply, or any of the other rehab meetings, AA meetings that would be in your community, that the people that run those reach out to them.
And I know we're not in the juvenile breakout session, but we have quite a few youth as well that look for that foot in the door. They may have an interest in their career and they just can't get into that. School doesn't excite them. but doesn't mean that they're not solid workers. They are looking for that opportunity. So if you're interested in some lighter, less technical work that's a little more flexible, we have some youth that we work with quite regularly that they're just looking for that opportunity as well.
Great, thanks, Mike. I want to make sure we leave some time for questions. We've talked about a lot here. I have more to ask these folks, but in our last 10 minutes, want to make sure we have ample time to ask questions of what you've heard, what you haven't heard. So I'll open it up for questions.
Is there a lot of demand? Like there's more willing workers that are on probation than there is a pipeline to them? Are you seeing that there's plenty of supply and not a lot of demand as far as workers?
Yeah, I would say flexible employment, there's a need. So a lot of our clients can't commit 40 hours a week during regular 8 to 4:30. It's just, they can't. They have other treatment and therapy and so forth. So they're definitely willing, and a lot of them would be hard workers, but we just, with the flexibility, there's not enough flexible employment available to fill the supply, I would say.
I don't have a question, I do have a statement though. Rest assured, if you're hiring one of these individuals, you know they're clean, because they have to be drug tested all the time. And you know that they're gonna show up every day because they have to. So that's a positive note. Hire them, give them a chance. It's a great opportunity.
And on that note, if you start noticing different behavior, call the agent. We'll jump on that right away.
They're gonna, yeah.
Which, if they are struggling, we can work on some other avenues and can work with you as well. So if you need a break from them for a couple days, we can arrange that too if they're struggling. So, and then we can regroup and then you get that sober employee again. So yeah, there's definitely a good relationship that can be built that way too.
So I've actually employed 2 people that are beyond what we're talking about here. They've made it to the next step in their life. And I just happen to be the second job they have. And very good employees, both of them. Do you find, the one thing I found with both of them is they had severe limitations. One cannot drive. Well, I have a trucking company. I mean, an excavation, you know. And while he is comfortable in a piece of equipment, and I'm comfortable putting him there, he cannot and will never have a license, you know. What percentage, or is there statistics out there, you know, for that type of restrictions? Not necessarily driving, but other restrictions, you know. I can't think of any other ones other than that one right now, but.
Yeah, several of our clients, when we first start working with them, don't have a driver's license. And so that's one of the goals too, is to help them obtain that driver's license. Sometimes they have so many fines and fees that they get behind. So we found a program that we can work with that they can set up a payment plan and still obtain their driver's license. So there are options out there depending on offense level. Assaultive individuals can't go through a program like that. But yeah, there's other restrictions, like we do have individuals that can't be around, you know, minors or so forth. They can still work. And so a lot of factory positions, or if you don't employ minors, they can be good employees as well, but they do have those restrictions, and that's something that you know, that relationship with the agent can really be beneficial, because then we can also stop by the employment too and just check in and say, oh, how are things going? And when they see that relationship with the employer, with the agent, there's no chance in the world they're going to try anything at work, because they know what could happen. So again, they're good employees. They made a mistake. Again, addiction's difficult, but everyone's on a different spot in their journey to that sobriety and breaking those chains of addiction. So there are many different obstacles and barriers, but yet there's always options around, as long as we're willing to be flexible without putting our business at risk. We would never advocate for a business to be put at risk. We'll be very transparent if this person is struggling in this area. We can't disclose a lot of information with HIPAA and so forth, but we can tell you as much as we can and give you a good indication if this person's really on the right track or struggling a little bit.
Are there, like when an employer is putting out a job description, are there words or affiliations or things that they can be putting into those job descriptions that tell somebody that they're going to be a friendly employer to somebody with a questionable background? Are there like associations that employers can be part of or anything like that?
Yeah, I know in like Fargo, I mean, I've seen places actually say felon friendly. I mean, if you don't want to say felon friendly, say second chance worker friendly. And the other thing, I appreciate just as far as like, we might not be able to give you the full story, but if you give that person a chance to sit with you and you just ask them, if they're ready to work, they're going to be pretty transparent with you about what this road's been like for them. So I've been humbled by what I learned, and I'm housing people on top of trying to get employment. And so I'm having them come and sit and talk about, I'm like, hey, tell me about why do you want to be here and what will this do for you? And when you learn a little bit more about what their life's been like, you're like, whew, yeah, I'd probably be there too. So just getting that person in front of you and talking to them doesn't mean you still have to hire them, but at least you've chatted and found out what's your truth. So.
How do you do, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. For current employees, obviously, we live in a small community, Google is everywhere. How do you deal with current employees and their biases towards hiring second chance employees?
That's a good question.
You promote the second chance worker. Kidding. I guess it would be transparent communication with all staff, that everyone's having this opportunity, and outside of work and who we are at work may be a little different.
Yeah.
But as long as we can work and the person's a good team member, that's what's important here. And that would be my take on it, because it does happen, and it'll happen outside of work as well. But as long as they feel valued at work and everyone is treated the same, I think it would work. But I think that transparency piece is very important.
And ultimately, you can't avoid it. And so, I mean, for me, that was where it was important for me to have a supervisor that had that ability to be able to not only communicate with that employee that is going through that, but the employee that is bringing the information and saying, hey, why are we employing this type of person, and to get them to understand the value and the whole thing. And not every supervisor is going to have that capability. So that's the importance of having that manager that really has that capability of getting everybody to understand the same common goal and the value that this person still brings, and things like that. And then the other thing that worked well for me is then when I had a couple employees, and that one employee turned into a mentor, and then it was like, man, these people are okay.
Yeah, I think if you have one person on your staff that is that mentor, that you know has that buy-in, that who knows? And I always think, we have we can sit in a room and think, oh, nobody wants that person. You may have been that person. The vulnerability to talk about your past, there's a lot more addiction in our past, in our families, once removed, we don't talk about it, and I see addiction leading to a high percentage of our felonies. And some of them are aggressive behavior, but if you remove the addiction, that behavior isn't there anymore. And so I always just go back to, what are we scared of? What is it that, it's fear. We all have the fear-based reactions is something that I think we're conditioned to do. So, if you're somebody who's thinking this could be an opportunity for us, maybe take some of your key players in your organization and bring them to a table and talk about it. What if we went this route? What are your fears? Is that valid? What if somebody says, oh, I think it's great, would you be willing to mentor? Would you bring this person in and have, just don't hire them and let them go. You need to have a relationship and support. Sometimes they need a little bit more work, they need a little bit more time. If they haven't been in the field for 6 months, 8 months, this is new again. It's starting over with some of these skills. So having somebody to invest a little bit, if you can afford that, you're gonna get a great worker.
Joe?
In your opinion, what do you see as far as classifications that are the most difficult to staff? So say it's, someone who's robbery, drug addiction, sex crimes, what would you say is the most difficult in rankings?
I know my answer.
Sex offenders and drug manufacturing is what the hardest ones, and they're the hardest to house as well. Just plethora of undesirables is what people refer to it as, and it's just breaking those barriers one step at a time. And they know that they're up against the world when they're trying to do what's right. And they completely understand that. They know they're going to be told no all the time. But again, if they're provided that opportunity, they'll be transparent with their restrictions and so forth in setting up those barriers within, or those expectations within employment. They'll completely understand that and they'll follow through with that. So sometimes they won't be able to do as much as other employees, totally okay with it, because they're provided that opportunity. Is that where you were going to?
Yep.
100%.
I would say domestic or assault. I run into that issue a lot, especially repeat offenders. Companies don't want to hire them because they think they're going to get angry at work, and cause a problem there, so.
Another one would be terroristic threats, especially after 9/11 was a difficult situation for people. And many times working with various individuals that I have is letting the employers know about the work opportunity tax credit and the federal bonding program, just as a little bit extra protection that may help, or kickbacks and that sort of thing. So those are a few tools that I've used.
We refer to that as threats of violence now, because when you add terrorist threats, people automatically think they're going to bomb a building and they're not. Can I say that word here?
I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's threats of violence. Yeah, because there's that, you see that on a piece of paper and you're automatically like, heck no. But it means something totally different.
Right.
Have you found that certain employment fields are more favorable to certain types of criminality?
Yeah, manufacturing is where most of our clients can find employment in the manufacturing field, because they're behind a closed door. Nobody knows they're there other than the other employees. And then a lot of times they can work the overnights, and when employers are desperate, they will hire that. But that's sometimes can be long-term employment, sometimes can be shorter-term employment, because they have other goals and other aspirations as well. And that's where if we can give them an opportunity up front as well, into the field of choice and interest. If they're successful doing something that they don't really care about doing, how successful could they be doing something they really love? And that's where having that opportunity to be a little flexible with hours while they're overcoming some of their the chains and obstacles in their own personal life can be a rewarding experience for both the employee and the employer for long-term success.
Great. Well, we are at time, so if we could give a round of applause for our panelists.